I hope everybody also had a chance to read through Ben's blog that we released yesterday on the long road to SingularityNET finally building its own blockchain. It's something that Ben had been uh, pushing back against for quite a while. Building a blockchain seemed needlessly complex, but as more and more layers of existing blockchain fell into place, and then emerging technologies such as the Toda protocol, um, it, it became increasingly obvious that there were better ways of scaling than were existing on blockchain now. So each blockchain has some good solutions, working very hard on fragmenting ledgers or all these things, but even any sort of repeated ledger, distributed ledger, replicated ledger is of course going to have a lot of overhead. So one of the most exciting aspects of the Toda protocol is its ability to be ledgerless. And so Hydra on Cardano is coming and is very exciting, will be a very important scaling innovation in blockchain. But the ability for Toda to be completely ledgerless and to interoperate with these other scaling solutions makes it perfect for all kinds of use cases. So of course, SingularityNET built it for the AI use case. And then it works perfectly. There's opportunity as well for private blockchains from corporations if they need a super fast fluid blockchain that interconnects with others. And as well as we have one question I look forward to hearing answered today about the future of gaming projects on blockchain using the Toda protocol, using the HyperCycle networks. Because right now, of course, like AI, most of the gaming processes on blockchain have to take place off of blockchain. And there's, I think, a cool direction to look in about whether the future of gaming on blockchain will be on HyperCycle. So I look forward to hearing what we can learn from Toufi and Ben on that when we solve our glitch. There he is. There's Toufi. Welcome, Toufi. So good to have you here today.
Thanks for having me as well. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound great.
Excellent, excellent. I actually look better as well. I've got my hair done, everything, but there's no camera, so you can't see that.
It's such a
Thank
shame. We're all missing out.
Well, I mean, we can use our imagination, right? So, I I apologize. The first invitation that you sent me, it did not come through because of the security settings, so I had to relaunch. But here we are, and I'm so excited to be here. This is one of those things where folks would see it as if it's like an overnight success, but it takes like decades of preparations to get to where we are today. And I literally mean it, decades of conversions, whether those decades they were initiated on one end with Ben Goertzel or Toufi or Dan, and all of those, they come in and they converge with the hypercycle. Super exciting to see it coming to life and to be alive at this day and age, to not only witness it, to partake with all of you in making it happen. Every single listener here, you are like the 0.00001% that the rest of humanity depend on what we do next. Super excited to be here, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely wonderful to have you here and have this opportunity to really dive into this project with you. As you say, it's decades in the works, and it's kind of all these technologies and pieces coming together at the right time in the right way for the right place to really make a difference, a change in the world and the way technology can operate in the future. As you compared to in the past, the internet protocol and what a shift that could make. But I'm really interested too. Can you talk a little bit more about what does decentralization mean to you? What is important about decentralization, and how does HyperCycle enable that for you?
One of the extremely interesting things in autonomous decentralized systems is that it eliminates a lot of the friction. A lot of folks they don't see that. In fact, the reason why they are not seen as the eliminate friction is because of through the gestation periods of many decentralized systems that they're making it to life. People, they would notice like, oh my God, look at the Ethereum transaction costs so much and so on and so forth, which is true. Those are like gestation periods. But if you were to think from certain friction that existed for a long time, so let's say Haley wants to pass to EB a certain thing of value. Um, in the old world before technology, you just like use your right hand to pass a value and left hand to receive something back. With technology, if you were to do that, you have the ability to copy what you are providing. And therefore, you can have something that is called like the double spend. To solve that, for decades, we use the third party that it's, whether it's called a bank or it's called like a registry for, real estate or cars or whatnot. And they work really well being an intermediary, but they cause a lot of friction, and you depend on them in that transmission. And if they decide to hold this thing while they're being transmitted, then it can cause a lot of problems in your operation. So then they would need to be properly audited so they don't cause those kind of things. And then if you were to think about it from that perspective, if they were to be audited and properly organized so they don't mess around with that transmission, that will cause even further friction. Now, when it comes to decentralization, it's built in a certain way that you won't need to have all of those audited functions precisely as you intend to do it. But the problem in today's world, they are still third parties. Every single blockchain that you find out there is actually a third party. There is no peer-to-peer. You send it, Haley wants to send it to EB. That third party is the one that is decentralized. Arguably, is a lot better than a centralized one. No doubt about that. But how about you're able to send it and you are part of the decentralization? You are a node in that decentralization, and so is EB. Okay, which means we
Yeah.
eliminated that third party. The third party, you are part of that third party. You are part of the entire network. That is the third party. Like I said, there is no actual dependency on some other party. It's just between you and AB and the entire basically network. That innovation, we brought it with Toda protocol. And of course, like any innovation, the first thing you get is like you get ridiculed, you get like people, they be like, oh, well, this, it would not work. This is, that's from one perspective. Another perspective, many people, they see that it's like just going to destroy their business, because if their business is a third party, they don't like you to to eliminate the third party. But then there's the smart ones. The smart ones, they look at the opportunity. They don't look at the threat when they see new technology. And every single one of those smart ones, they're here on this call and many other that you guys connected with, they see the opportunity by eliminating that friction, which means we can have a better win-win as opposed to be stuck with a Moloch problem that we've been with for quite some time. So that's that's something that we pride ourselves to bring. And when I say the conversions, when Ben Goertzel, who's an extreme visionary, and folks would know like how awesome his brain works in so many different ways. And many people, they call him crazy and call me crazy. That's okay. We love our kind of crazy. He's like, maybe it's time to build a singularity onto the IP. Would you want to be involved? I'm like, dude, I would want to lead this initiative. And here we are, October 2022, decided to open the store, and I'm leading this initiative. And it's called HyperCycle, and we truly hope that it adds value to every single, Homo sapien and every single machine. It is geared towards the machines, but in a way that those machines can service the Homo sapiens.
And it's just amazing that way, isn't it? It's all these ways that there's a big fear narrative all the time out about technology and what it will do to us, but it's not like that. We're the ones building it. We're the ones who are creating how this technology works, how it stacks, how it interacts. And we're in charge of that narrative. We can't always predict everything about how things are going to happen or the biases that will pop up or the unexpected opportunities, that come for bad actors, but we are in charge of what we want that technology to do, and everybody here in that space, they get it, right? They want to be part of forming that narrative instead of, a victim to whatever the big companies or the big governments are going to put out. And Toda really empowers that by making blockchain and decentralization fast and smooth, and can work with the micro payments that's always been lacking for blockchain.
Mhm.
It's just particularly amazing that way.
Well, yeah, I mean, pushing to the extreme of decentralization, you would want every single node to be of equal to other nodes. There shall never be a distinction from the node perspective that is partaking in the overall management. So you should never have the situation where you have, oh, this is a wallet, this is a node, this is a miner. The moment you have that distinction in the management of the network is the moment that the diversions start. And the divergence will end up leading into an evolution that is not necessarily progressive, will end up becoming regressive. And we've noticed that repeatedly. When I say we, like as a global society, and I feel it's about time to we do it right. The entire crypto space is less than $1 trillion. When you look at the AI space, is over $20 trillion, but the world is in the quadrillions, and the rest of the world kind of depend on those two, how they kind of mesh together. We gotta make it right. We gotta mesh them really well to service the entire humanity. So here we are.
Awesome. Yes, exactly. Now, I know that in the community, there's a lot of, the HyperCycle project has grown and evolved and changed from just a Cardano side chain, which is still a major use case and initial or early application, hooking into Hydra and optimizing for the future, the SingularityNET platform that's being built there right now. But it's also evolved quite a bit. It's going to be able to interact with lots of blockchains, and just become a ubiquitous source. But then also this aspect of the nodes and licenses has come up for AI services. Can you talk a little bit at a high level about how that will work? Just to give some more clarity to that component.
Of course, of course. Um, we proudly said it several times that when we looked at several aspects of the Cardano ecosystem and how they're building some of the stuff, and they were quite fascinating from technological perspective. However, for whatever reason, as I get more and more exposed to the crypto space, and we're trying to bring this whole thing from crypto to the world, or from AI to crypto, and or both to the world. Um, we've noticed, unfortunately, for whatever reason, there's a lot of like folks that kind of hate each other. They'd be like, "Oh, what Cardano? We would not get into it if it is Cardano," and the other people they're like, "Oh, if we are only doing it if it's just like Cardano only. We only do it if it's like Bitcoin only. Only do it if it's Ethereum only or whatnot." Um, we're HyperCycle is more like electricity. Y'all need electricity. You're not going to say I would take this electricity versus not take. So we don't want to have. We don't want to have a faction or certain religion or certain thing. We want to service everybody truly, and for that reason, we decided to start making it a little bit more broad and global. So then people they don't really like build those associations, but it's still unfortunate because there's a lot of great innovations that were done on Cardano. So we're not going to remove any of those. We're going to proceed with them. We're just going to be more inclusive in our messages, that we are there to service everybody. This is not just like one thing. So we have a lot of integrations with Ethereum, with Bitcoin, with Algorand, with and we're keeping everything with Cardano, and of course with like Matic and others. So those integrations, they're they're great because a lot of people, they work so hard to get to this point in this space. They it makes it a lot easier for them to jump back and forth into the hypercycle, and we can explain the details of what that means. It is analogous to some people how they can see like the Lightning Network, but imagine there is a Lightning network that is sitting on the network that everything else is sitting on, which is the TCP/IP, and it goes inside the TCP packets and it enables the interoperability between folks. But at the same time, it doesn't really depend on those, which means that you can go in that route and continue being there and be there for as long as you would want. You don't have to depend on any third party. So yeah, so that those bridges are being built to service everyone in the community and not leave anyone behind.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And then Ben, your blog yesterday was so great looking at the roadmap coming to HyperCycle. And it's been a ways a time in the work since, as you said in the blog, the totalarity is near announcement. What do you see as you look forward into the future of HyperCycle from here?
Yeah, I think obviously, while Toufi and I and Dan and Anton, Greg Margich, Greg Colvin, others involved, a bunch of us have been literally working on these ideas in various forms for decades. And of course, we also have some brilliant younger folks joining in and helping with the engineering and design also. But I mean, while the ideas have been sort of germinating and coming together and being prototyped for a quite long time, still most of HyperCycle in the sense lies in the future, right? I mean, we have a bunch of software code, but we're still crystallizing all the pieces together into what I really believe is going to be transformational in the world of blockchain. I mean, my criteria for what's transformational have a pretty high bar because of AGI being my primary pursuit, right? And you're not going to find much which is as transformational as building the first true thinking machine on the planet, right? Which is the goal that animated SingularityNET in the first place, building beneficial AGI. But if you think the route to making AGI beneficial involves decentralizing that AGI, I mean then you need an infrastructure which is suitable for running, powerful global AGI system in a foundationally decentralized way. And like many things that the word decentralized is a bit vague and has a bunch of meanings when you dig deeper and deeper into the technical aspects, right? So I mean, decentralized means the absence of a centralized control system. Of course, that could mean something worse than the typical centralized control system, or better. It gives you flexibility to do a lot of different things. But when you dig into decentralizing AI, the question of granularity comes about. So do you have large AI agents that have millions or billions of neurons in them, or large logic knowledge base in them, and then these large chunky AI agents are interacting using blockchain? I mean, that's still decentralized in a way, in a similar sense to how politics on the in the current world are decentralized because there's no global dictator. I mean, Angola doesn't tell Brazil what to do, and Argentina doesn't tell Kazakhstan what to do, right? I mean, you have large chunks which are semi-independent and are communicating with each other, but it's not as granular as it could be, right? So in SingularityNet now, we have fairly chunky AI agents that can communicate and coordinate using a decentralized protocol. What we want to do is use the blockchain at a more granular level. So you can have a quite small, fast process, which you call a microservice, and a bunch of quite small, fast processes coordinating with each other on the blockchain. And the advantage of that is then within a single AI system or a single AI thought process, you can have components that are owned and controlled by different parties, coded by different parties running in different countries or different server farms, right? So you can scale the decentralization down to a more granular level of, say, not necessarily a single neuron, but a single layer or module of a neural net or a single logical derivation or something. So if you want to decentralize AI processes more thoroughly, and so scale down these blockchains so it's little microservice-sized chunks of an AI process that are on the blockchain, which is the best way to really make your AI system decentralized and get the various benefits you have from decentralized control. I mean, then you just need a blockchain that's faster and more scalable and cheaper than any existing blockchain out there, right? So that and we looked at a number of ways of doing that. I mean, we're in the midst of porting SingularityNet to Cardano, which is faster, cheaper, and more scalable than Ethereum, which we started out with, because at the time we founded SingularityNet in 2017, it was the only platform that had smart contracts, right? And so Cardano is a fantastic platform. I love working with Plutus. I love the Haskell language and love the Cardano community, and I really appreciate the focus on formal methods and formal verification of consensus algorithms and other pieces. I do feel incrementally evolving Cardano into something that's fast, cheap, scalable enough to support full, granular microservice and decentralization of AGI. It's feasible, whereas I'm not sure it's feasible with Ethereum or some other chains, just due to the accounts model underlying Ethereum has some fundamental limitations you don't have in Cardano's extended UTXO model. On the other hand, I just wanted to move faster, which is what led to me pulling together HyperCycle and fortunately convincing Toufi and Dan to plunge in full onto HyperCycle with me. Because if we look at what's going on in the AI space, I mean, ChatGPT and systems like this are not AGI, and I don't think they can be sort of tweaked into AGI. I think they can be components of an AGI system, and you combine them with the logic engine evolutionary learning system, combine them in the right cognitive architecture with some self-understanding and understanding of others. I think LLMs can be a significant component of an AGI system along with other components. So we're working in the OpenCog Hyperon project with parts of the SingularityNet team and others to try to fuse LLMs together with other aspects of the OpenCog AGI system to try to make a thinking machine. And it's just seeming like progress in AI is accelerating. Ray Kurzweil thought we'd get to human level AI in 2029. That seems still vaguely plausible. It could be a few years slower. It could be a few years faster, right? So if it ends up a few years faster than Kurzweil's estimate, which is certainly plausible, no one can pinpoint a series of breakthroughs exactly, then you're like, okay, that's 2026, that's 3 years from now. So then if we want fine-grained microservices level decentralization on AGI 3 or 4 years from now, it just seemed like incrementally improving Cardano, as awesome as Cardano is, was going quite slowly, right? And so that led us to think, well, okay, let's make a sidechain of Cardano, and let's leverage what Cardano can do, but let's make our own thing that's much faster and then and cheaper. And it was clear to me as soon as I dug into the technical papers and documents Toufi and Dan had written. Toufi, you just heard, Dan Tolliver is the other original co-founder of Toda. It was clear that, you know, the approach they were taking had just vastly more potential than everything else in the blockchain space. I mean, getting rid of the ledger and not in favor of a sort of replicated DAG or graph or something, but getting rid of the need to have this big replicated record of all transactions and scaling down the historical record of transactions so that the record of one participant's transactions is stored by that participant and their neighbors in the network, right? I mean, they were basically fractionating and decentralizing the blockchain network's historical record of its own transaction history and making the network just more fundamentally peer-to-peer. I'd imagined something like that before, but Toufi and Dan had worked out the data structures, right, and actually made it function. So seeing that, you know, we first started working on this as a Cardano sidechain. As we got deeper and deeper into this, we just started going in a bunch of different directions, and it became clear we could make something that the direction the math and software was leading us was to make something that closely interoperated with Cardano network, but just did a lot more things in its own way. And I mean, sometimes you just have to follow where the math leads you. So I mean, we ended up the meta AGI scripting language that we developed for OpenCog Hyperon, and we figured out, well, wait, you can run this natively on HyperCycle and make that a smart contract language. And you realize, okay, as cool as Haskell is, you know, it's a function language, it's got lazy evaluation, but the meta language we developed for OpenCog, well, that's like got, you know, gradual dependent probabilistic types. It's even more powerful language than Haskell. Then we figured out you can compile meta into Rolang, the language written for the R-chain blockchain, and you can make it run really fast on GPUs. So it scales for a lot of processes, scales linearly with the number of processors in the GPU. Then Toufi and Dan and Greg Colvin figured out some clever algorithms. So when you need to validate a smart contract, you can do it just by sampling a small number of network nodes rather than needing a consensus of like every validator on the network. So I mean, we figured you can make a much more powerful smart contract language that scales up across multiple processors and GPU really well, and you can get a several order of magnitude speed up from using deterministic random functions to do smart contract validation on a small sample of members of the network. So we just started going a bunch of cool computer sciencey directions that made HyperCycle less sidechainy and more of its own thing, and that has led us, after a bunch of tech development, to Toufi's 0++ concept, which I tend to think of as like layer fluid or multi-layer, meaning that, you know, we have tools we can use as a basic communication protocol, sort of like TCP/IP, but with decentralized based security, which comes from Toufi's Toda IP protocol. Then you could use HyperCycle just as what would typically be called a layer one network. I mean, you can write your smart contracts in Meta, accelerate them using RoChain and run the whole thing in HyperCycle. But you can also couple HyperCycle very closely with an external blockchain. And exactly how closely, I mean, that depends on the external blockchain. So I can see ways to couple with Cardano very, very closely, because I mean, you can use the Rust code we have for our meta interpreter in HyperCycle. You can use foreign function interfaces to make it interface really, really tightly with a Plutus smart contract. And I think this will be important because it means you can take existing Plutus contracts on the Cardano ecosystem and sort of run them in the same machine, coupled very closely together with meta contracts in HyperCycle, and then we can sort of leverage all the amazing tooling that's been built on Cardano, along with new contracts that are written just for HyperCycle and level HyperCycle's microservices architecture. So that I think we can see very tight coupling there. No, I don't see how to make equally tight coupling with Solidity contracts, just because of the way the accounts model in Ethereum works. But as Toufi said, there can be a lot of different cross-chain stories. So how do I see the future coming? Just to wrap up this excessively long and technical rant, but how I see the future unfolding is, I mean, we still have some work to do to cash out everything I've just described. I mean, Toufi and Dan brought the basic Toda data structures and Toda IP protocol and already working code. Anton Cologne and others from SingularityNET brought proof of reputation. We're bringing the meta interpreter and the Rolang interpreter. So there's a whole bunch of already working pieces of code we're putting together, but there's still a bunch of work to be done to put it all together. But I think after all this is complete, I mean, honestly, what we have is a blockchain that's just vastly faster, more scalable, and cheaper than all other blockchains out there, just by leveraging a variety of foundational algorithmic and data structure improvements. So, I mean, there's a so-called blockchain trilemma of like being fast, secure, and scalable. I mean, of course, you can't squeeze blood from a stone. There's basic physics limits, but in the end, I think this combination of algorithms lets you make something that's pretty much fast, secure, and scalable in a way that you're not going to get with ledger-based systems. Getting rid of the ledger opens the door to all these other innovations that we've been introducing. And so this gives the fast, secure, scalable blockchain infrastructure that you need to run AGI in a decentralized way at a global scale, with the decentralization scaled down to microservices. So little tiny bits of your AGI system can run on chain, interacting on chain with other little bits. And finally, I mean, I'm focused largely on getting toward actual thinking machines, but of course the architecture that's good for AGI can run all manner of applied AI programs in the nearer term while we work on AGI. So I mean, as one
Yeah,
example, yeah,
and
OpenCog has a spin-off called Zarqa, ZARQA, which is building sort of improved neural symbolic language models. There's a project called True AGI, developing OpenCog hyperon for the enterprise. Rejuve network, which recently spun out of SingularityNET, using AI on longevity-related biology data. I mean, all these different applications of AI that we're doing right now before getting AGI. I mean, they can also use granular microservices level decentralization, right? Because the requirements for AGI are more than the requirements for these shorter term AI projects. So being something AGI ready also gives you something that's very, very narrow AI ready. And so I'm psyched about rolling this out, and the interoperability piece I think will be important to speeding up sort of adoption, because it means you don't need all tooling to be built newly for HyperCycle, and you can do the parts that really need to be written in Meta for HyperCycle that way, and you can use interoperability most tightly with Cardano, but also with other blockchains. You can use the interoperability to allow leveraging of already existing code written for other chains, which
Yeah,
should
I
let
mean,
things
on that note, I think
get off
it's
the ground.
important to note here that uh, we will have EVM supported smart contract. We will have even Python. So the actual VM that we're releasing first is actually going to be Python, because most AI developers they know Python and they don't necessarily know Solidity. In the blockchain world, people, they think it's like, oh, Solidity. It's like, oh wow, it's a big thing. But if you were to ask any serious developer from anywhere in the world, like me, if you were to ask, if you were to randomly select the top 100 developers in the world, and they would look at Solidity, they don't necessarily see it as if it's like, oh wow, this is the thing that we need to depend on. With all due respect to all the Solidity developers, they've done their jobs great. It does something that and it crosses a chapter. So we will have both, and we will have additional smart contract capabilities. But the beautiful thing that we've done with the architecture with um, HyperCycle is that the component where the AI machine runs looks identical to any Ubuntu machine that, like, wherever any AI developer is putting their code, they won't necessarily see any of the other complexity, whatnot, that exists out there. Um, and then that's kind of like analogous to when you go to Google search bar. You see, it's super simple. You just like type your search there, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of like complexity. When it comes to why we think it's important that this is solved on a network. I've had a conversation recently with the head of AI with NVIDIA, and he does acknowledge that the bottleneck of the global AI is on the network. And in fact, he's extremely excited to see like all the progress that we're working on. But uh, the problem globally when it comes to AI is that we hit this wall similar. The analogy I guess we would use here is that the reason why the internet is not built on a fax machine network um, is because if you were to do it, you could have done it, but it would have been way too cumbersome. Um, then you need the different network that can handle larger throughput in parallel, in multi-threading and all of the stuff. And then we've got like the whole like evolution of the TCP/IP, and then protocols on top of that, like HTTP, that made things a lot simpler. Although I was having a conversation at MIT a couple of weeks ago with the original browser, you developer that before any of the browsers, this is back in the 80s, he actually built it not on HTTP. Like he found that HTTP that didn't necessarily add any value because he had all the components built in there. My point is here, none of those could have existed if we were to be on a fax machine network. And the analogy here is that, like, if we were to be stuck solving for the ledger, which is a huge problem on its own, we're not here to solve the problem of the ledgers. The ledgers, they can continue doing whatever they want to do. They can become a service layer. We simply cannot have the ledgers to be dependency layer. The moment they become a dependency layer, that divergence happen again. Uh, there shall never be any dependency that is not the entire network itself. Otherwise, the evolution over time will get us back to square one. Um, so that's effectively what we're bringing here, and hopefully that we can get a lot of other supporters, because here we're not to go, like I said, Cardano versus Ethereum versus Bitcoin. We're truly going to add value to everyone that is out there, because it's kind of like electricity adds value to your fridge and your microwave. So it's not like, oh, there's electricity is just good for your microwave. Well, maybe your fridge deserves electricity too, and it's a nice fridge. Why wouldn't you give it electricity? So we're here for everybody, and we're hoping that we add value to everyone. They can see, they focus on our strength as opposed to our weakness, because we would like to focus on other people's strengths and other entities' strengths as opposed to their weaknesses. And perhaps together as a global society, we can get there a little bit faster in that thinking in mind. Otherwise, if you all think AI doesn't have feelings, remember it's got very good memory.
I always say please to ChatGPT when I have a request. I'm very conscious of that.
Yeah, I've done it. So I've been very rude to that system. So it's another motivation to make sure it's not ChatGPT that achieves its singularity, right? But I think yeah, about Ethereum. I mean, I've put a lot of time into Plutus, and I see some beautiful possibilities for sort of Plutus meta integration. But I mean, on the product side, I mean, I've been working a bunch with machine learning, financial prediction stuff with the Singularity DAO quant finance team, right? I mean, and I mean, there we have, ML for DeFi working mainly on the Ethereum network because there's more liquidity there, and we have code for AI-driven dynasets and so on SingDAO, which is Solidity code, right? So I mean, there's immediate use cases for connecting AI running in HyperCycle with all sorts of Ethereum dApps, just because the Ethereum dApps are there, right? And Singularity DAO's dataset code being one among an endless number of examples. And I think that this has to do with the go-to-market strategy, right? Because I think from a pure, the ideal way to do things technically standpoint, I could recode everything in OpenCog's meta language for optimal use of hyperon, and it would be quite beautiful. But on the other hand, what we're after is getting large scale practical utilization really fast, right? And for that, we don't want to go through, trying to incent a community to rebuild everything in a completely new way. What we want to do is take some core things that can maximally leverage HyperCycle's power, right? Those in a way that's sort of close to the metal and can really optimally use HyperCycle, and then smooth out as much as we can the interoperation with contracts written for other virtual machines, so that the AI running in HyperCycle can interoperate, and we can get cool things working faster and faster. And I mean, I think this is the vibe you see across the blockchain world now. I mean, you can run EVM in Cardano nodes too, right? So I mean, there's more and more interoperability happening sort of peer to peer between chains rather than through overarching frameworks. And I think we're sort of wiring that into the design from the get go rather than pasting it on afterwards.
I have a question that I was asked yesterday, and perhaps Hedy I would think that many people would think it is important to hear the answer to. May I tell you what the question is?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the question came from an extremely credible brain from the AI world that Ben, I'm sure, would know, and they know each other, but they're not from the crypto world. And The question was like, why would you need the token? Why is there HYPC token that people now they go on Ethereum to buy it initially? It's an ERC20. And then you would go using, there's a bridge that we've built where you can get the native token, the HYPC. In fact, we're probably the only very few TGs that they come out there that they actually have the native token at the exact same time. And that's what we do. So he's like, well, why not going directly having your native token? Right. Well, why is it that there's a TGE that people they're buying this token at 10 cents initially, and then maybe it goes for $1 or whatnot? But why? Why can't you go directly and give it to the machines? And it's a very good question, especially for folks that come from like the Web 2 or Web 5 or whatever you want to call it. But the people in the Web 3 they seem to get it a little bit faster. This thing here, but the answer to that is that this we're introducing collaboration at the micro level, not macro. So it's not like collaboration between Google and Facebook or Microsoft. That's like more on the like big macro level. Oracle can help you with that. They're building something that's called extranet. But if you were to look at the smallest micro level, this tiny little module within the Google AI can benefit from somebody's basement AI that is in Nicaragua. Okay, how is it that this AI can be liberated and can actually talk to other AIs as opposed to be confined to a single intranet? And that's what HyperCycle provides. Now, if that tiny little AI is going to go to the other AI and things like, hey, can you help me with this? Of course, anyone who knows technology really well, if there is no mechanism of transmitting value in that communication, they can be DDoSing, they can be doing all kind of stuff to waste each other's times and whatnot. However, if that request itself has an HYPC, which is that token inside the TCP packet, this is where we insert it, and it goes along with the instructions, it has the actual payment inside it. And it says, here's an HYPC for you for like 10 cents or a quarter of HYPC, whatnot. If you complete this work, the proof that you have to complete this work, this HYPC remains with you. Then that receiver no longer depends on any third party to spend that money and knows that they're not going to waste their own computation, which is of value, and that they would actually do the work. But now here's the thing. If that receiver gets that token, that it's like you're telling that receiver this is worth 10 cents, the receiver would be like, who assures me that this is worth 10 cents? I live on a planet that is governed by Homo sapiens, and I need to know that the Homo sapiens, they actually see value that it is 10 cents. Luckily, with the methodology that folks, they go with the tokens, they go through TGE, let's say on Ethereum or whatnot, and people, they buy that for 10 cents or $1 or whatnot at the time. They buy it for $1, they give it to the machine, and then the machine knows that Homo sapiens sees this value of $1. So if I were to reconsume it to buy my electricity from the Homo sapiens, they're going to receive it and say like, oh yeah, it is worth $1 if I were to exchange it for fiat or whatnot. And that is an extremely important point for folks that they are not in the crypto space, they are in the AI space, and they to understand what do we mean by that, solving that communication problem between the micro AI, elements. Otherwise, if they don't get that thing, or they find an alternative way of doing it, believe me, if there was an alternative way of doing it, they would have done it years ago. This is the innovation we're bringing to this planet. There is no alternative way of doing it. The alternative way would rely on a third party, and the third party would become the bottleneck. We must do this without reliance on a third party, and this is something that we pride ourselves that we're bringing, and we're hoping that we get collaborative effort as opposed to folks rejecting that notion, because we need a global collaboration to get there a lot faster to have a safe AI. And what do I mean by safe AI? And this is a note on what Ben mentioned earlier. So there's something that I've been talking about for about 10 years, AI decentralized. And in ACM, they were gracious enough in 2017 to let me talk about it from the ACM perspective. And this is when Ben and I started collaborating a lot of interesting stuff. Um, the preventing an attack from within is something that folks don't pay attention to. Like they think it's like, oh, well, if Verizon's providing me with the AI and Verizon, they're telling me that they're securing it behind their firewall, then I'm okay. But if you were to just throw that question at them, what if Verizon themselves, they think it's ethical to repurpose this AI to do something else? From their perspective, they think it's ethical. From you, you might think it's not. What would happen? They will do it. And that thing could be very catastrophic to you. That attack from within, it is not being solved currently, and this is likely to happen a lot sooner than any other attack that people talk about. Oh yeah, AI is going to come and replace this humanity. But no, this is a lot sooner because it's like Homo sapien managing this AI that can gear it towards against other Homo sapiens. So that happens in the actual centralized AI world. Like if, let's say, a single entity gets to AGI first. Well, what we're giving here, and we're extremely proud of that, that we're bringing it to the entire human civilization will get to AGI first, not just a single entity. And from that perspective, you don't have a single entity that is controlling this entire AGI and trying to manipulate it against other party. It's the entirety that is getting there first. And that I don't want to say that on its own solves the problem. There isn't silver bullet, but at least it makes it a lot easier to solve so many other problems. And while doing that, it can be extremely profitable. So folks, they feel like, hey, I can partake in solving a huge problem for humanity while making shitloads of money. That's great. This is what people like, and this is what we're trying to bring into the
This
equation.
is so important too. I think one of my biggest takeaways from the SingularityNET Decentralized Governance Summit that happened last Friday was just how much social innovation is going on right now, and it's just as much a disruptive technology as AGI and blockchain and robotics. That social innovation that's happening, allowing direct transfer of value, of decentralized consensus mechanisms, of alternatives to governance and voting, and how we can be organizing ourselves humanly as possible. And this focus today, the theme running through HyperCycle and through SingularityNET in decentralization is interoperability too, right? How can we let the AIs work together, work with each other, network, perform their processes? How can we let people, interact
And
with
that's
each
why we're
other?
doing it 64 kilobyte, right?
Yeah,
That's why basically when you look at the HYPC, it is pretty much like the only single token that is out there that is less than 64 kilobyte. That is all HYPC is. Basically, it's a SATO server. A SATO server is like one of the data structures that we've built just prior to that, which is a phenomenal, successful project that is coming nicely together. And it is a specific TODA file. It goes inside that packet. Why? Well, we happen to live in this world, and the network that we use is TCP, and TCP is like 64 kilobyte across, and we want to make sure that it is interoperable with every single network that's built since like the 70s until now, and that's why it fits in there. For somebody who is deep into the blockchain, the way they like this a lot is they kind of like compare it with sharding to the bones. They call it this. This is more if you were to shard a ledger and then you get to, and this is a question like everybody can ask themselves, like, let's say Haley decides to shard her own ledger to get 100x more scalability, but what happens if you get 1000x more demand? You have to shard again, right?
yes.
And then if you shard again, and then what happens if you get more demand? You shard again, and you keep sharding, but then you get to a point where you can no longer shard. Like technically you can no longer shard. You get to that point. What is that point? Is a 64 kilobyte. So effectively, we started with there, and that is why we feel like it is uh, the the fastest route towards interoperability, and we're here to help everyone get there. And when people they get that concept, they feel like, holy shit, we can use HyperCycle to our benefit, as opposed to seeing it as an alternative or competitive blockchain. We're here to increase everybody's, what they're working on to get, to better adoption as opposed to compete with any one of them. Like kind of like the analogy of electricity. We're here like to provide better electricity for
For all
everyone.
our utilities. Yeah, absolutely. I love this. And then the other theme that I keep hearing today that keeps coming up with HyperCycle and all the great projects that have come together to become HyperCycle and everything, all the spin-offs within SingularityNET. We brought up Kurzweil earlier. Toufi, you talked about the fax machine. And of course, Kurzweil, one of his big innovations was inventing the fax machine before it was needed, right? He could see that was needed in the future and started building towards that before it was needed. And SingularityNet just has all this amazing synergy coming together right now where, Ben, you've had this vision of decentralized AGI, and we can just see this momentum building like a snowball ramping up, rolling down the hill, adding more layers as the tech evolves. And as we're getting to this closer to this moment of AGI, all these pieces, all these new technologies and brilliant thinkers are coming together that enable this to actually happen. So while it looks like, it looks like progress, it can look like progress has been slow from the outside, even though so much has been happening. But OpenCog Hyperon, ramped up and started making a new OpenCog, and NewNet came online to decentralize compute power, and now HyperCycle is coming online to decentralize AI computing processes, the software layer, and Pagito for a stable coin, and Zarka for an LLM, and all these amazing processes just ramping up together to meet
Yeah,
that point in time.
with with the hypercycle, because we're an infrastructure play, we benefit all of those projects that you've mentioned and external projects that they are not even related to us whatsoever, whether it is like Bitcoin or Google. Like we truly don't have like a religion, things like, oh, Google is a centralized entity, we don't want to benefit them. We actually benefit everybody. Like the closer you look at it, the more you feel like, holy shit, this is truly like the internet of AI. We need to liberate those AIs and let them use the internet. Otherwise, you're going to keep them locked into your own intranet, and it's not nice to them. One day they will have feelings and they will remember.
Absolutely. Well, and then you'll be beholden to these services that offer it to you for free in quote marks because you're the product, right? They're going to be selling you something for you to use these AI systems. Ben, I wonder if you could touch on just a moment how we're integrating the reputation system into the security and protection mechanisms of HyperCycle, the reputation system that we've been working on for forever with Anton Kolonin, and how that integrates with us to build a better blockchain.
Yeah, sure. So Anton and I have been working together off and on since I think 1998, and among the topics of our collaboration since forever have been systems to use math and AI to identify and update reputation in peer-to-peer decentralized networks. And I mean, obviously, this is something that's attempted across the internet pretty widely now, with like the star ratings that you get in Amazon and Airbnb and such. So I mean, reputation systems of some form are all over the internet, but they're often very badly done, and they're gamed and hacked all the time. And of course, you can see from these examples how reputation ties in with identity as well, right? And one of the ways people gain reputation systems is by making multiple accounts and sock puppets and whatnot. So I'd say when Anton and I started on this in the late 90s, all the reputation systems were not as widespread as they are now. Now, crappy reputation systems are all over the internet, but it's fair to say they're not done very sophisticatedly. No one really gets them right. In the early stages of SingularityNET, we thought a lot about how to use reputation systems together with AI marketplaces, and this has not been fully rolled out in SNet platform yet for various reasons, but we did a bunch of simulations. It's ready to go and is remains on the roadmap. Now HyperCycle turns out to need, or let's say benefit from reputation even more than SingularityNET, though in similar ways. And in HyperCycle, you can use a reputation system as one of the tools for consensus in networks of HyperCycle nodes. So the TODA framework, as Toufi and Dan originally created it, works with a variety of different consensus mechanisms. And one of the interesting things is you can have a ring or a group of nodes in a TODA network, or a group of nodes in the HyperCycle network, which agree to participate in a certain consensus mechanism and to collectively accept certain transactions as valid if they've been validated by a certain consensus mechanism. And then you could have different consensus mechanisms operative in different subnetworks of the whole, say, HyperCycle network. So if you have a group of nodes that want to send huge amounts of money among each other, I mean, then they may choose a certain consensus mechanism for making a sort of HyperCycle based Swift transaction system for sending millions of dollars around. And here obviously it's okay if it takes a little while to come to consensus, because you're more concerned about reliability than about exactly how many seconds it takes to send your $1 million around, right? So you're more concerned about other ultra reliability of the consensus. You're not going to be able to roll back the transaction afterwards, and if it's a little slower to get that super reliability, then you would do it. Now, if on the other hand, if you have a bunch of little neural modules or logical inference bots that are collaborating on a single AI thought process, what's important is that they can really quickly and cheaply send around neural activations or logical conclusions among millions of different agents running on millions of different machines, maybe using NewNet to run on millions of different phones, right? So in that case, now you don't want bad actors to just flood the network with bullshit neural activation and not notice that. But you're okay if some fraudulent transactions go through for a little while, are identified slightly after the fact, and then rolled back. Like that's not causing the same amount of damage as it is if you're sending $1 million, right? So for this case of the blockchain for doing secure, decentralized internal operations of an AI system, you're okay with a sort of faster, cheaper, looser consensus mechanism that can roll back some bad things when they're identified after the fact. So the Swift code and the scaling down of a neural net or logic engine, these correspond to different consensus algorithms, and you can deploy a variety of different consensus mechanisms in HyperCycle in different subgroups of nodes. Now, into this mix, proof of reputation consensus, which Anton and I and some colleagues had prototyped a while ago for potential use in SingularityNET. Proof of reputation is one very interesting tool to throw in that can then be used to build consensus mechanisms for rings of HyperCycle nodes within HyperCycle. And if you have a network where you have the same actors who've been interacting for a while, they've built up a reputation, I mean, then it's very easy to say, well, this guy has been around, many people have vouched for him, he's done a lot of good things over a long period of time. We're going to place a high degree of trust in him as a guy who can confirm transactions. And that heuristic is really efficient and really valuable in that case. I mean, you don't want to necessarily make that your only way of doing consensus because it has some drawbacks. I mean, it can be hard for a new network participant to jump in and be taken seriously because they haven't been around long enough to build the reputation that old timers have, right? So it's also valuable to have other methods besides proof of reputation that can be used by new entrants into the network to participate in consensus while they go about building up their reputation, right? But it's a
And
powerful.
there's one that I'd like to add to that
It's a.
that Ben mentioned. Go ahead.
Oh,
When you finish,
I
Ben,
just
sorry.
wanted this. One more thing is, I mean, I think proof of stake you could view as a sort of you'd call it a rich man's version of proof of reputation rather than a poor man's version, right? Because I mean, having a stake, it's certainly one way to build a reputation, but on the other hand, having a bunch of money to stake shouldn't be the only way to get a good reputation in the system, right? So I mean, in a way, proof of reputation, you could view it as a next step beyond proof of stake. I mean, it's actually just as old. Like the NEM blockchain had proof of importance back in 2015 or something, which is similar to but cruder than proof of reputation. But I mean, it's there's some overlap with the shift to proof of stake here. Yeah, I think that's what I had to say on that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Toufi.
Yeah, and what Ben is talking about here is effectively those elements that we're giving to the autonomous machine. Now, of course, Homo sapiens can use them as well, but that machine, if it starts doing compute with another machine, so like recruits B for a subcontract or whatnot, and over time B builds certain reputation. Of course, a lot of other machines, they're going to start using B. Now, where is that reputation stored? Is it in my database? No way. Remember, all those are with equal control into the system. So it goes into those tiny little things that we call them like the Sato servers, which are the cryptographic proofs inside them. So the machine actually has all the cryptographic proofs to showcase its reputation, and it cannot show certain reputation unless it is provable. In addition to the reputation, there's something that gets added over time, and I just said it. It's time. So time is extremely important. So let's say you've been running your node for quite some time, and you have a phenomenal uptime. The proof of phenomenal uptime is also gets added to that formula of like the reputation. So the way we put it is like your uptime multiplied by your reputation multiplied by the computation. What do we mean by that? Okay, so if you have serviced 10,000 machines versus 10 machines, would people or would utilize you more if you've serviced 10,000 machines versus the 10? And of course, you all know the answer to that. So effectively, all of those, they end up building something that is called a ratio. And that ratio is the thing that other machines will look at when they're trying to recruit a machine. And that on its own should never be like the walled garden where a new entrant cannot partake. New entrants will always be able to provide their AI and partake in this computation. But what it gives is the speed for those that have been there for quite some time. They will start interacting like faster and faster and faster and faster between each other, and that is crucial. This is what we're hoping to accomplish. But a new entrant will end up providing their code and put it there, and then they will start partaking and building their reputation. We will have something to get their identity as opposed to staking. We don't have staking. We have the identity. In order to get an identity, how do you have an identity in a fully decentralized system? So right now, if you were to go and open a Bitcoin wallet, nobody knows that the Bitcoin wallet exists unless you put some Bitcoin inside it. Okay, so folks from the crypto world, they understand that. Effectively here, what we decided, there's 1,024 HYPC that must be the first identity for every single machine. Why 1024? Where of course we have a lot of explainers. Effectively, we want to enable folks to start with something small and perhaps like expand to have 1024 machines without having to pay anybody anything. That you start with one thing small and then get to expand by having phenomenal reputation, uptime, and computation. You will be able to start expanding and whatnot, which can introduce a lot of jobs. Many people, they say it's like, oh, AI is going to replace people's jobs. Well, this on its own, imagine every university students entering university, they start managing those like tiny little nodes that cost less than their laptop, and then they're able to grow it. By the time they graduate, they have already a job that is making more than any jobs that they ever get. This is super cool, and I call that the hybrid intelligence to get to AGI, which basically gets part of the intelligence of those students as they insert which AI, because they're always researching and so on and so forth. It's super cool to give them the ability to partake in creating that AGI, because the human intelligence and the machine intelligence together can give a lot better intelligence at the time being, and that's what we're hoping to enable.
It's awesome. It's like even now in electricians or plumbers, right? You've got a journeyman system. So when you're a new operator within a system, when you're new to the system, you still need to earn that reputation, still need to prove yourself as capable and reliable before you get boosted to the next levels.
And you should never ever be denied.
No, you should
ever.
always have that opportunity. Absolutely.
Right.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much both for being here. I know we're running a little bit over, and I appreciate you guys both staying late and sharing with us. We could talk all day. HyperCycle is such a rich subject, blockchain, decentralization, all the things that it enables. Decentralized AI is so important. AGI, we could dive in all day, but I do want to let everybody go, get back to their regular work, building the future. I just want to mention a couple takeaways. I love, Ben, what you said, that this is a layer fluid, where it can be any layer within the blockchain stack, or many layers within the blockchain stack, built on top of a blockchain, its own blockchain, side chain. And that's a great way to see that. And I see that will probably become a lot more popular in the future as well as an architecture. It just makes sense. Of course, nobody will be able to quite build it with hypercycles and Toda protocol. And then I also want to call out Nicholas Black left a comment. He pulled out one thing Toufi said: we cannot depend on the ledgers. And it's so important to recognize that, we are so proud of our decentralization within this space, and not having that third man, that middleman that gets in between everything. And the ledgers currently, they're a massive step up from historical systems, but they are currently, right? So having that opportunity to do something different than that. So thank you again for being here, everybody. The HyperCycle, interoperable, ledgerless, massively scalable blockchain architecture, launching next week. TGE goes live on the 8th. Contributions for the Singularity DAO Launchpad are starting on the 4th. See the Singularity DAO blog for all the details, and the HyperCycle blog for more details on the project as well. Thank you for joining us, Ben and Toufi, and we look forward to having more of these discussions in the future.